movies, music. Well, hello there, people of YouTube. My name is Elon Osborne, and this is my channel where I talk about movies, audio, and music. And today, since I brought up Auro 3D in my last video talking about the different Atmos height speaker placements, I thought to myself, well, I have a receiver with Auro 3D, the Marantz SR7015. So out of curiosity, I wanted to see just what the Auro 3D Upmixer could really do. Now granted, I chose some particular movies that I knew would probably need some help, as opposed to other movies out there that I know have superb Dolby Atmos mixes, such as Blade Runner 2049, Mad Max Fury Road. I already know those sound great. But before I even began these tests, I figured out something that was a surprise to me that I needed to change in my Marantz software in order to even get Auro 3D as an option. I have in-wall and in-ceiling speakers to make up a 5.2.4 configuration. And in the Marantz software, I specified that I did have in-ceiling speakers. But as you can see at the bottom of this setup menu when I'm looking at the amp assign, the only supported configurations are Dolby Atmos and DTS X. So Auro 3D is pretty particular in where the speakers are placed in order to support an Auro 3D upmix. So what I had to do to get past this little hiccup is lie about it. I had to go down to my height speaker choices and I had to tell it, oh, actually I have front height and rear heights. Is that cool? Because now you can see the supported formats are Dolby Atmos, DTS-X, and now Auro 3D as well. So even though I technically don't have an Auro 3D configuration per se, I figured I could get away with just a little white lie for science, right? I mean, what's gonna happen? Am I gonna get arrested by the Auro 3D police? Auro 3D police, open up! So I started this experiment by popping in John Wick 3 and going to the motorcycle action sequence. I also disconnected all of the ear level channels and turned off the subwoofers so that all I could hear was what was coming out of my height speakers. And it was crazy how different the mix was. In this particular scene, it was pretty much just comprised of a little bit of very subtle music and kind of droning sound design, still very subtle. And then once the action actually picked up and they were on the bridge fighting each other, nothing. Silence. But since I had the option of not only Dolby Atmos, but also Dolby Surround plus Neural X, which is DTS's version of upmixing, and Auro 3D. So just listening to the height speakers, I watched it in Dolby Atmos, I watched it in Neural X, and I watched it in Auro 3D. And I have to say, Neural X and Auro 3D were actually pretty similar, but they were much different than Dolby Atmos. Both Neural X and Auro 3D added some actual sound effects back into the height channels. Yes, there was some music, but it was actually louder than the Atmos mix. There were lots of motorcycle sounds in Neural X and Auro 3D. There were some gunshots. Again, gunshots did not make it up to the height channels in this particular scene in the Dolby Atmos mix. So I know it's a director's choice, I guess, to throw certain sound effects up into the height channels or not. But I personally enjoy knowing that the height channels that I have up there ready to play some audio are actually being utilized. So I know the whole idea behind an Upmixer is basically just to take the given audio and try and do their best with processing it how they would process it, DTS and Auro 3D. So it's not exactly perfect. It's basically taking what they can and copying that signal to also play in the height channels. So there were a few sound effects that sounded a little hollow or maybe just a little bit tweaked because they weren't really supposed to be up in the height channels. But again, my personal preference is liking the fact that there is more going on way up there. Because let's face it, it was really hard to install those ceiling speakers. I have a media closet that's way far away from the TV. I remember getting those in-ceiling speakers in the summertime, and it gets real hot up there in the attic. So I remember by the time I snaked all of the speaker wire to the 4 different speakers, just trying to get all 4 done as quickly as I could because I didn't want to go back up there. I remember coming down from the attic just pouring in sweat. So the fact that I put that much effort into getting in-ceiling speakers, you better believe that I want some audio coming out of those as much as possible. So not only did I watch that scene in all 3 of those different formats, but I then hooked up all the speakers again, turned the subwoofers back on, and then watched that scene again with every speaker active in Atmos, in DTS Neural X, and Auro 3D. And I gotta say, when everything is going again, it is obviously less noticeable when the height channels aren't as active, just because the other ones are so loud, and you've got all these sound effects and dialogue and music competing. But what I will say is that I did notice just this height expansion overall. And since I have 10-foot ceilings and I got a wide living room, I personally want that. Because some of you may be thinking, well, it's supposed to be subtle, or they're supposed to just not play anything because they want you to focus on the bed layer speakers. Sure, but like I said, I put those things up there and it was really hard to do so. So I want to have the best elevated experience possible. And since I had gunshots, swords swishing, motorcycle sounds going not only in my ear level speakers, but up top as well, it just expanded it above my TV and all around. Because watching the straight Atmos mix again, with all the speakers going, I could definitely tell that it was a shorter soundstage that I was dealing with. Wasn't reaching up to the tops of my ceilings. And even Neural X and Auro 3D were slightly different too. They were pretty much the same, but there were some times in the Neural X version that some of the sound effects would kind of fade out and then fade back in depending on what was happening on screen. But Auro 3D seemed to be the same volume the entire time. There were even very subtle differences, like the Neural X version had a couple different sound effects that the Auro 3D version didn't. Not a big deal or anything. It was interesting how this one scene could have so many different variables, depending on which format you were listening to. For science! So just to go beyond this particular experiment, I decided to pop in Bad Boys for Life, because I knew that audio track has IMAX Enhanced DTSX. But wouldn't you know it, I don't have the option of Dolby Atmos and Auro 3D when it's IMAX Enhanced DTSX. In fact, I even put in Hot Fuzz because I know that one is mixed in regular old DTSX. But even that doesn't give me the option of Atmos or Auro 3D. It's basically, you're just dealing with DTS and that's it. But if you are dealing with a DTS HD master audio track, say 5.1 or 7.1, then, at least with the Marantz, you will get the option of Atmos, Auro 3D, as well as DTS Neural X. So for that, I popped in good old Jurassic Park. And the differences between the different formats was actually not that much. I think the Auro 3D mix was just a little bit louder in the high channels, but nothing too extraordinary. So then I thought, well, okay, so that's a DTS HD master audio track. What about a Dolby True HD track? Because truth be told, when Blu-ray became the next best thing, it was DTS that was king. So it actually took me a while to find a Blu-ray that I had that was actually mixed in Dolby True HD. And it just so happens that Akira is mixed in Dolby True HD, or at least the Blu-ray version that I have. But honestly, it didn't really make that much of a difference. It was kind of the same thing with a DTS 5.1 or 7.1 mix. But that could also be because it was animated. I don't know. So, does this mean you should run to a retail store or run to your computer and order a receiver that has Auro 3D? I wouldn't say that's the number one reason you should get a receiver, but I can't lie that it is really nice to be able to have the option, if I so choose. Because like I said before, from now on, I might be choosing the Auro 3D option when watching Dolby Atmos. I want to know that the effort I put in to installing those in-ceiling speakers was worth it by getting those height channels active as much as possible. And that's Auro 3D's whole thing, at least the upmixing part of it. They take what's in the ear level speakers and expand it to a second level. Even better if you have one of those Voice of God speakers straight above you, because then you have the complete dome of audio all around you. And I know that I talked about IMAX Enhanced just a couple weeks ago, and most of the receivers that support Auro 3D also support IMAX Enhanced. Win-win, right? I guess now I just hope that the Auro 3D police don't come looking for me.
And there you have it.
Thank you for joining me on this little experiment that I wanted to do. Did you learn anything new, or did you kind of already know what was coming? Do you already have a receiver that supports Auro 3D? Have you tried switching to Auro 3D with your Dolby Atmos mixes? If you're considering upgrading your receiver, will you now consider Auro 3D when you're making your choices? Let me know in the comments below. As always, please be kind out there to each other. Don't just watch TV and movies, experience them. And of course, always be listening.